Joining me now, Congressman Adam Schiff, ranking member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Congressman, do you have questions about what happened?
I certainly have questions about it, and I've got a preliminary briefing, but there's a lot more to learn about this. I would say, I guess, a few things. I think it's certainly true that an operation like this is weeks or months in the planning. That doesn't mean that it necessarily got a green light by the Obama administration. I don't think we know that. But I also think that the shelf life for blaming President Obama is really running out for Donald Trump. He really needs to take responsibility for operations under his watch. And I don't think there's any way that Sean Spicer can really say at this point that this was by any measure a successful operation. As we know, we lost one Navy SEAL, and that's tragic. There was civilian loss of life, and we fully exploited the intelligence that may have been gathered to determine whether it truly was a success. If this was an operation designed to gain intelligence, it's simply too early to say whether that was obtained that justifies the kind of losses that we suffered. You might remember we had a raid in Syria that went after Abu Sayyaf. He was killed in that raid. But in that case, and that was another risky operation, we did seize a lot of intelligence that proved to be enormously valuable. But here we simply don't know.
Well, what strikes me here are two things. First of all, that there hasn't been a ground operation like this ordered in Yemen since 2014. There have been tremendous amount of drone strikes, as we know, in Yemen, which many contend have been part of destabilizing the country, and that's another issue. But there hasn't been one in 2014. AQAP, the organization targeted here, has sort of turned its focus towards the active, raging civil war in which they're fighting against the Houthis, and there's a sense that they may not be concentrating on external hits. I mean, the question seems to be, what's the threshold for ordering something this risky?
Well, that's the president's determination. These operations are always going to involve risk, and there's always the chance that things go dramatically wrong, even with the best of planning. So I wouldn't conclude that this was inadequately planned. It's a question really of how much risk are you willing to entertain? What is the potential benefit? And there's no bright line here. The president ultimately has to make that call. Now, it may be that this is influenced in part by Michael Flynn, who was very good, I think, at a tactical level, but was, very much determined to continue to press operations and intelligence in Iraq, and I think that was very successful. This may be an indication of a desire to increase the tempo of special operations raids, intelligence gathering operations in Yemen, and that will bring a lot of risk, and we saw that risk result in a tragic outcome here.
Finally, are you confident in the National Security Council process as currently constituted in this administration?
Not at all, and I think we saw in the unlawful and really poorly executed executive order that process was either non-existent or has gone terribly awry. But I think what's operating here, among other things, is you have Steve Bannon, who is not a national security expert, comes from a very right-wing background, on the one hand, influencing policy in areas where he shouldn't. And you have Mike Flynn, who I think is a very brash, often erratic person who is in the responsibility of National Security Advisor, who is supposed to be bringing together diverse viewpoints and harmonizing if he can and bringing about a consensus. That is not his history when he was the head of DIA. So it's a combustible mix, which I think in many respects aggravates the president's tendencies, which are erratic to begin with, rather than mitigates them.
Well, that's not reassuring, Congressman Adam Schiff. Thank you very much for your time.
It's not, I'm afraid. Thank you.